Well, let's take some questions. Let me go to Jessie Fields. You have a question about nonpartisan elections, Dr. Fields?
Yes, I do. Thank you very much. Thank you, Kathy, for your statement. I think this is a very relevant time to make the political process directly responsive to and inclusive of all people. And Dave, a key feature of the initiatives that you describe in the book is that they are nonpartisan, citizen-driven coalitions that include Democrats, Republicans, and independents across partisan, racial, and ideological divides. But when those people who have come together in this inclusive way, when those people go to vote for candidates in states such as Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Florida, and in fact in almost all the states, even the ones with open partisan primaries, they will be divided again. So legislators elected in closed partisan primaries have been found to be less responsive to a broad range of voters. And that division insulates elected officials from the voters, and the initiatives that are supported by a broad range of voters, such as the Florida Rights Restoration Initiative to restore voting rights to formerly incarcerated individuals, or the Michigan Voters Not Politicians redistricting reform, these initiatives may be watered down or reversed by the legislature. So there are ongoing efforts to change the partisan, divisive structure of our elections. And there was the exciting 2010 California victory for the ballot initiatives for top 2 nonpartisan elections and redistricting reform. Currently, there is in St. Louis the campaign for St. Louis Approves, which is for approval voting and for a nonpartisan top 2 system. And also the Florida Let All Voters Vote ballot initiative for nonpartisan elections will be on the ballot this November. So what are your thoughts on these campaigns for nonpartisan elections? Dave.
Thank you. That's a great question. I appreciate it. There's a lot there. I would listen. Our system is broken, and it's broken in so many ways around polarization, around partisanship. You know, if you've looked at Lee Drutman's new book, which I think is terrific, closing the two-party doom loop, or Ezra Klein's book on polarization, which is new, or I mean Heather Cox Richardson's new books on the South and the Civil War. I think they're all terrific on this topic. We have become so deeply, our party has become so closely wrapped up with identity, and it's all happened in a way that has put more pressure on a two-party system than it's able to actually handle. And so I think you're right. What we see is that when independent redistricting is on the ballot in Michigan, in Missouri, in Colorado, in Utah, in Ohio, it wins 60, 70% of the vote. What we see in Florida is when, you know, Second Chances is on the ballot, it wins with 64% of the vote.
Right.
What we see in Idaho is when Medicaid expansion is on the ballot, or in Nebraska, it wins above 60% of the vote. You know, ranked choice voting in Maine, all of these initiatives, all of these ideas are very, very popular. But our political system isn't set up to deliver them. You know, part of that is our polarization. Part of that is polarization has been exacerbated by gerrymandering and all kinds of ways in which politicians are no longer accountable to voters. Indeed, they've become insulated from voters and they don't need to listen. I think we've seen many examples of that, right? Whether it's in the personhood amendments that have been pushed in states that are, you know, far more stringent on abortion, the prohibitions than even voters in Georgia and Alabama are interested in, whether it's what the legislature in Florida did on the Second Chances Amendment, whether it's what the legislature in Maine did on ranked choice voting, whether it's all of the things that have been tacked on to all of these ballot initiatives around the country that were so successful. So I think we need to find new and creative ways to get ourselves out of this. And I think top 2 is very creative and interesting. I think top 4 is even better, right? I think ranked choice voting offers, a real possibility here. Approval voting, all of these methods that find a way to get us back to 50% plus 1 again in a general election, right? Because that's what gerrymandering does. I mean, gerrymandering, it makes general elections non-competitive. It moves all the action to the party primary, and nobody shows up in the primary, and you get 15% turnout in July, and it's the most committed partisans. Final 5 with RCV, yes, absolutely. That is what happens, and it pushes our system just into breakdown, into absolute breakdown. And I don't think it needs to be. I mean, if you look at all of these issues, and it doesn't even have to be these democracy initiatives, it's healthcare, it's guns, it's immigration. There's a road forward. It's simply that our political system hasn't been set up in such a way as to make it work. And the politicians who are in charge are trying to hang on to control, and they're fixing the system in ways that work for them, but not for the rest of us. Yeah. We need to make it a laboratory of democracy again, not a meth lab of democracy.